This is going to be a little short episode just talking about the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which was signed on August 23rd of 1939. I'll be speaking a little bit about the process in which this treaty came to be and some of the lasting effects of this treaty for the next few days all across the world. So the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was, because of its name, it was signed between the foreign ministers of the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. That is Vyacheslav Molotov and Joachim Ribbentrop. So, on the road to this treaty, Ambassador Schulenburg, the German ambassador to Moscow, was speaking with Molotov for several days, talking about a possibility of German-Soviet alliance, at least in short term, as opposed to a Soviet-allied or German-allied pact going on. So this was a secret but very important diplomatic proceeding, because there were several things going on in this time of late August, which actually began in early August as well. Great Britain and France were also in discussions with the Soviet Union, but the ambassadors of Britain and France were not supposed to make a quick agreement with the Soviet Union. In fact, the governments of both countries were not in support of making a full alliance with the Soviet Union due to conflicting interests in the Middle East, in Europe, and in ideology. They believed that communism and the Soviet Union, as a result, was an inherent threat to democracy and Western civilization. That's why they had poor relations with the Soviet Union ever since the Russian Civil War. Keep in mind that Britain and France have both intervened on the side of the whites in the Civil War, and thus continued to have poor relations with the Soviet Union. But they nevertheless sent ambassadors to discuss, albeit not in earnest. In fact, a famous example is the fact that the British embassy would only send its ambassador in a slow boat rather than a plane. They would try to take as long as possible. After they finally agreed to meet in Moscow, they made the foreign minister or the ambassador to take a slow boat all across the North Sea, all across the Skagerrak, into the Baltic Sea, and then to St. Petersburg before finally taking a train to Moscow. So, few weeks. They will make sure that it took a few weeks at minimum to reach Moscow. And this was by no means unintentional. The Allies, including Britain, intentionally wanted to delay a meeting with the Soviet Union because they knew that they couldn't reach any sort of agreement by early August or by late August even. And if they had nothing to discuss, there was no reason to meet beforehand. The exact opposite of this was true for the German Foreign Ministry. The German Foreign Ministry was very quick to respond to the Soviet Union. They acted very quickly, and they were eager to meet with Molotov. In fact, it was way too quick for some, and it took letters and telegrams between Berlin and Moscow many days in order to agree that finally they should meet. And it almost came in out of the blue. If you read some of the letters, which can, luckily, due to sources such as the Avalon Project, which is very useful. It's a project from Yale University, which digitalizes many important documents from this era. You can see that the Germans were very eager to meet with the Soviets, and the Soviets likewise returned their feelings. They were also eager to meet with the German foreign minister, and they agreed to meet in Moscow on August 23rd, both with plenipotentiary powers, so that both could sign agreements that dictated large, huge things related to their respective countries. However, the two countries agreed upon somewhat of an agreement beforehand. They agreed that it would be a non-aggression pact, but there will also be some sort of secret protocol that would divide Eastern Europe between the two countries' sphere of influences, and that is going to be really important. They both met, and in fact Molotov said that the Soviet government actually desired to use its non-aggression pact with other countries. It had signed non-aggression pacts with Latvia and Estonia, as well as Poland, to use as a model for its pact with Germany. But of course, a draft of the protocol would not only include a non-aggression pact, but also a secret protocol dividing Eastern Europe into two parts. Now, on August 22nd, Ribbentrop flied over to Moscow, had a dinner, and the very next day, he met with Molotov, and it was so important that Stalin was present at the meeting as well. Molotov received Ribbentrop, and they discussed for several hours the strategy that the two countries would continue to do, and both both foreign ministers agreed that the two countries should maintain friendly relations and split up Eastern Europe between the two countries. Now, the exact demarcation line between their two spheres of influences were deeply discussed, and they came up with an agreement on the same day as they began the meeting. So it was a very quick meeting, and the results will be tremendous. So the main clause of the pact, stated several things. So first, the provisions of the neutrality pact, the neutrality agreement that happened in 1926 between the USSR and Germany, would continue. That is an agreement that Germany and Russia made in 1926 to agree for peaceful relations between the two countries. So that's just a continuation of friendly relations. And then some of the actual articles, I believe there's 7 articles in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. And the first one basically just talks about not attacking each other, very typical non-aggression pact things. And then the next few ones would be more specific ones, say maintaining good relations with each other economically and politically, and if there's a war between one of these two powers and a third, then the second party would not deliver any aid or support for that country at war with them, which is actually very important, making sure that they don't have any proxy wars against each other. And then they agreed that that it will be signed, and the non-aggression pact will continue for 5 years at its minimum, or actually it's for 10 years, I think, and they would have to sign again in order to extend it for another 5. So that was the main clause of the treaty. The secret protocol included a division of the sphere of influences between the countries. So Ribbentrop and Molotov divided everything between Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Romania between the two countries. So Finland was to be entirely in the Soviet sphere of influence. Latvia and Lithuania were also entirely Soviet. But interestingly, the Baltic state of Lithuania was to be in the German sphere of influence. And this Lithuania territory actually included Vilnius, the little strip in Poland containing the Vilnius territory. So that would mean that if Poland was to be invaded, Lithuania would fall under German sphere of influence, and Lithuania would gain the Vilnius area. However, a lot of the Ukrainian and Belarusian ethnic areas in Poland would fall under the Soviet sphere of influence, while the majority of the heart of Poland was to fall under Germany. One important thing was the Lublin area. The Lublin area had many natural resources, including coal and steel, and some metals, and that was handed over to the Soviet sphere of influence, which would actually later change hands at a later date. But it roughly followed the rivers of the Vistula, the San, and then the San and the Narew rivers in northern Poland, and then the Vistula River. So, so what that means is Brest-Litovsk is going to be in the Soviet sphere of influence, and Warsaw would be in the German sphere of influence, and the Lublin area would also be Soviet. And then Romania was also split, but it was mostly handed over to German sphere of influence. It was the Bessarabian area that was to be part of the Soviets. Now, Bessarabia is an area that includes modern-day Moldova and a tiny snippet of southwest Ukraine. But at this point, it was a part of Romania, but it had not been a part of Romania before 1919. So, those were the protocols agreed to by the Soviets and the Germans. They split up those countries, and this part was actually secret, which is actually really important. It was secret, so no country knew about the secret protocol that would violate the neutralities of 6 countries in Eastern Europe. Now, international reactions to it were almost immediate. On the same day, various countries started to respond to it after hearing the news. And in the next coming days, up until like the 24th, the 25th, even the 26th, countries would be asking questions. And one of the most important countries in this matter was Japan. Japan had signed the Anti-Comintern Pact with Germany back in 1938, but was not entirely a German ally. However, diplomatically, they considered each other close. Japan was at war with China, and although Germany is in some military advisors to China, Germany was sympathetic to Japan for the most part. And the biggest thing that they had in common was hate for the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was Japan's arch nemesis. They were a big threat to the Japanese in many ways. The Soviets controlled the port of Vladivostok. they had North Sakhalin, and they also had the puppet state of Mongolia, in which the Battle of Khalkhin-Gol was occurring. There's skirmishes currently going on between Japan and the Soviet Union. And naturally, Japan would feel betrayed that a friend like Germany would sign a non-aggression pact, a friendly pact, with the Soviet Union, whom they believed was a great enemy of Germany. So the reactions was negative throughout the Japanese government, including Prime Minister Hironuma Kichiro, and it was not good. Japan was almost in diplomatic crisis because of this, and this would eventually lead to the resignation of Prime Minister Hironuma and his replacement with Prime Minister Abe, which would happen in the 30th of August. Another important reaction was from Poland. Poland, situated between Germany and the Soviet Union, was equally appalled by the treaty. Not for the same reasons as Japan, however. Poland always considered the Soviet Union threat, and Germany as a potential threat as well, especially with the rise of the Third Reich. And now, with Germany and the Soviet Union as allies, Poland was sandwiched. It had a smaller military than the Germans, and the Soviets combined. They would not be able to hold off for a long period at all if the two countries were to invade. Even fighting against one would be a dismal task. Two, impossible. So Poland and the Polish government were startled and were put on all alert because of this treaty. And for good reason, and due to hindsight, we know that it would be an accurate judgment to be afraid of that pact. The Allied powers, Britain and France, were also surprised, but they were less astonished. They were disappointed that those two countries could do it, could create an alliance, because they were of ideological opposites. That was the thought in countries like the UK and France, which thought that a right-wing government like Germany's and a left-wing government like the Soviet Union could never work together. But the truth is, it was not about ideology. It was about it was about realpolitik. It was good for both parties, Germany and the Soviet Union, to make this pact, because diplomatically they were both isolated and they needed a strong major country to rely on, and that was each other. Many people in the British and French governments were surprised by this, and actually I would take back my statement saying that they were not appalled and they were not astonished. They were certainly appalled and astonished. Many in the British government were not only furious, but very surprised. They were taken away by this pact of two devils, as they believed, because these two countries of very different ideologies coming together was unthinkable. And the belief in the United States of America was not much different. Roosevelt was also surprised. He did not expect such a quick resolution between their relations and a swift pact to be made. And this is not even knowing the secret protocol. There were thoughts in everyone's head that the Soviet Union and Germany could split Poland and the Baltic states up between each other, but they had no evidence that this was to be reality. And so, uh, both countries, Germany and Soviet Union, really surprised the world with this. Another country to examine is Italy. Italy's response to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is also a curious topic, because Italy had a formal alliance with Germany, namely the Pact of Steel, which ensured that, at least in name, that both countries will come to the aid of another if they were to invade another country. And Italy did not believe that the Soviet Union and Germany could really be good allies. Mussolini knew that Hitler abhorred Bolshevism, that he had strong beliefs of expanding to the east, that he explained even in Mein Kampf, the ideas of Lebensraum and making living space in the east, mostly in Soviet Union's territory. Mussolini was surprised, but he didn't dislike it. In fact, he soon came to embrace the alliance between Germany and the Soviet Union. So, those are all the countries I'll go through. Maybe I'll briefly talk to China. Yeah, China was also, China was not too unhappy about this. They had mixed feelings about this pact, because China's main concern was driving Japan out of its territory. If the Soviet Union did not have to focus on any threats to the West against Germany, the Soviet Union could put a lot more focus on the East, in Japan. And keep in mind, the Soviets were already in confrontation with Japan at this point. So, the Soviet Union putting more pressure, military pressure, in the Far East was certainly a big plus for China, especially the communists, because of course they want more Red Army forces against Manchuria. But even the nationalists, nationalist China received some aid from the Soviet Union, and although they were at odds with their temporary ally, the Communist Chinese, the Republic of China, the nationalist Chinese, were more focused on fighting Japan than fighting communism in China. They would have been happy to see the Red Army drive into Manchuria to take down Japan, than to continue a who knows how long war in the cities of central China. So to recap, Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was an agreement between foreign ministers of Germany and the Soviet Union. They agreed to have a non-aggression pact, that they would not attack each other and maintain friendly relations, but there was also a secret protocol that put Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Bessarabia, and Eastern Poland in Soviet hands, and Lithuania and Western Poland in German hands. Japanese reactions were detestful, and Polish response was also in shock. They were afraid, especially at this point, with looming potential invasions from either side, especially Germany, because of all of the anti-Polish rhetoric that began in Germany against Poland. Britain was shocked. They did not believe this could happen. France believed much the same. but Britain was very unhappy to see this giant threat that was of Germany that was unmatched by the Soviet Union. Of course, France was more focused on Germany than anything else, but Britain was almost equally afraid of Germany and the Soviet Union. And that's a key difference. Britain was more further away, so Britain had an equal focus of the threat of Germany and the Soviet Union, because Germany was close to the North Sea. They could fight against Britain there, and they also shared a border with France. But the Soviet Union shared not a border, but they were close to British interests in the Middle East and in British Raj. And the Soviet Union was much larger in size than Germany. Now, the United States was also surprised, but they were less concerned. They just didn't know which side to take. Before they saw Nazi Germany and Soviet Union generally as both threatening countries. But with this pact signed between Soviet Union and Germany, it became easier to pick side because both countries were more or less on the same side now. And lastly, Italy's relations, or penultimately, Italy's relations with the Soviet Union would relax for a little bit until Barbarossa, of course. And Italy came to eventually embrace the German-Soviet alliance. And China, likewise, was glad to see a more Eastern-oriented focus of the Red Army. So, that's my explanation of Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and its impact on the globe in the immediate days following it.